This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 398 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about a 2-1 defeat against RB Leipzig. Fun! Matthias Zuk is here with me. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
That's fine. I'm fine.
Nah.
I'm just fine. No, I'm actually doing well, Stefan. How are you?
I'm not doing well at all. I am a Sixers fan and a Dortmund fan, and I think combined they're like 5 healthy players, if that. It's crazy. So I don't even know what to say. I feel like if I support a team, there's just a guarantee that all the good players will just go down with injuries left, right, and center. So yeah, I don't know. You said before we hit record, literally right before, let's get this shit over with, and this is how I kind of feel, because I don't know why I just was really irrationally mad that Dortmund lost this game, even though I don't feel like you can even fault them too much, since, you know, as everyone saw, they were tired and they were decimated and it caught up to them, and yeah, Leipzig did fluke themselves to a win. They maybe could have won higher. I don't know. But yeah, it's just annoying that Leipzig get to benefit from our injury crisis, because they don't deserve it. They didn't even play that well, in my opinion. So the fact that they came away with 3 points and, popped the champagne, so to speak, just very annoying. Just a very thick thorn in my eye.
Yeah, I mean, RB Leipzig may well have been called RB Nkunku, because, I mean, he was the difference maker. I mean, the one time where he did kind of the 2 little pirouettes, I had like JJ Okocha versus Oli Kahn flashbacks from the 90s in that moment, just playing through Dortmund. Thankfully, it went off the post. So Nkunku was definitely the complete difference maker. For Leipzig, he played fantastic. I mean, Leipzig had a 2.4 XG. He probably had a 2.0 of the 2.4. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. Dortmund 1.2. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? Marco Rose said it, look at the 90 minutes. Leipzig were the better side. They had the better goal scoring opportunities and deserved to win. Dortmund tried well at times. I feel like after halftime in the tactical adjustment, Dortmund responded well, obviously got the equalizer. And then you could just see the tiredness creep in, and Leipzig were not tired. And the pressing from Leipzig was relentless. And it was just, I keep on translating German into English. It's horrible, but mit der Brechstange. I mean, it was just with the crowbar. They just kept hammering and hammering and hammering, and it wasn't so much that it was overwhelming force of shots or anything like that. I mean, Dortmund had 11 and Leipzig had 14, so I mean, it wasn't that much more possession. Leipzig edged a little bit, pass accuracy. They edged it a little bit. Dortmund actually had slightly more corners, but it was just constant. I feel like it was Angelino crosses and Nkunku shots. I mean, that's kind of what it felt like. And so it's not too. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking right now. The XG 1.1 alone was Christopher Nkunku, and 0.9 was Yusuf Poulsen, and that's just because he scored. So that's already 2 of the 2.4. So other than that, Marco Reus tried really hard. Jude Bellingham kind of tried, but it was just were tired. And I can't even blame them for it. And I saw afterwards people on Twitter were putting the blame on Marco Rose. Some people say, we need Terzic back. It's like, what the fuck was that going to make a difference? I'm sorry, but that's just freaking stupid. Whether it's Terzic or Rose or Klopp or whoever on the sideline, you still have all the injuries. And when I hear, there's just not enough depth in the defensive on the defensive side, how many more fullbacks should Dortmund sign? Freaking hell. You had Paslak and Meunier. Meunier is the only reliable fullback left, and then you had like 5 other ones that are injured. It was great to see Dan-Axel Zagadou back for about 8 minutes. So there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope there. I believe I read that Rafael Guerrero's back in training, so there's some hope. But, it was, like you said, a completely annoying game, and I'm not surprised it went the way it did. I wish it hadn't, and just kind of move on. I mean, obviously we need to talk about people like Donyell Malen, but anyway.
Well, let's talk about the things that Roy said right after the game, because he did level some criticism toward Rose, because he said with the back 5, basically the way Dortmund initially lined up, they were one man short in midfield to press Leipzig and hunt for balls, and he felt like that Dortmund were undermanned that way, and it didn't help. And Rose basically said, what do you want me to do? We don't really have a left back, and we're just trying to put everyone in their best position, sort of. And, the switch did come at halftime, and it did improve for a little while. But, I think Dortmund would have had to be really lucky to not concede 2 or more goals over 90 minutes, to be honest, just because they just ran out of steam. But, for the first half, just a couple of things that really did annoy me is, one, I thought that Pongracic had a really terrible passing game. And that, to me, sort of almost negated the advantage that you have if you have 3 in defense, that you at least, in theory, can have the first wave of build-up work out without being pressed and being under pressure by the strikers. But if you just miss your teammates and pass it straight to the opposition, that's not really helping either. And positionally, Pongracic also not great. Obviously, if you want to look at the first goal that Leipzig scored by Nkunku, the pass from Gvardiol, where I think Akanji stopped running, right? Because he thought Nkunku was offside, but obviously Pongracic was a little bit too far behind. Obviously, the offside trap not working is always more likely if you play with a back 3 or back 5 than with a back 4. But this time it was just a really good pass. Just like Meunier's pass to Reus was just fantastic for the equalizer.
It was a carbon copy. Yeah. It was the same basic situation. One defender stopped, the other one played him onside, and bam, goal. I mean, It was the exact same goal.
Pretty much. Only with the difference that at least in Nkunku's goal, there was a theoretical chance that Hummels would get that with the sliding tackle. When Reus scored, there was no one else to defend that. So that's about it. But it's a super annoying goal, and to me, a candidate that needed to be subbed off, to be honest, and bring on Knopf, I think was a good idea. And I think for a couple of stretches in the second half, Dortmund were the better side because of the adjustment and because they still had some energy left. But another thing that's starting to annoy me a little bit also in the first half is that Julian Brandt, even though he's overall playing okay, playing pretty well, he's got just this element of sloppiness in him in the first half where he has just
it's insane.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but there was, for example, this one throw-in where he tries to control the ball with his left foot and he just goes out of play right away, and he's seeing teammates where none are, and it's a bit weird, but he usually gets it together as the game progresses. But just when you have an opponent that presses really hard, and you have Julian Brandt who's supposed to maybe play out of this pressing and has the opportunity and chance to do so, and then basic footballing things don't go the way they should because he's tripping over himself or the ball, or I don't know, just snatching at it weird. It's annoying. It just feels like he's not entirely focused as he should be, and I don't know what to do about it really. It's just little annoying because a couple of really good opportunities broke down and Dortmund didn't really have that many, especially in the first half. This was probably the worst first half we've seen in a long time from Dortmund. I don't know if they had a shot or a touch in the opposition box. I think Malen at some point he dribbled into the area, but I think the ball just ran out of play. And I think if I remember correctly, the best chance actually came after a corner kick. Was that right? Where Bellingham had a really good shooting opportunity, but Malen obviously blocked it because how else could it be? Dortmund, I think at the break were very lucky that they were not down by 3 or 4. And Leipzig wasteful as we predicted and previewed. And of course, we have to also just praise Gregor Kobel for the heroics he showed in this game. This one save where he saved the ball and then just had this sort of foot save encore before Paulsen could just tap it in. What a spectacular moment! And I think moments later he had to save another one. Matthias, I think I've raved about Kobel in a way I have rarely raved about players on this format before, and I'm feeling entirely justified with that. I am feeling in very safe hands with Gregor Kobel. If the opponent scores and Kobel can't save it, then for 99% of the time I'm pretty sure that it was just a really good shot. And I don't know, but I feel like he is the kind of goalkeeper that wins you a lot of games, whereas Bürki didn't do that to the same extent. So at least on that position, I'm feeling, I think there's a palpable improvement. And if there's nothing else to feel good about, then that's where I'm going with.
Yeah, I mean, Gregor Kobel probably had his worst game for Dortmund and his best in the same 90 minutes. He made some errors, especially in build-up.
Mm-hmm. And then slip he had.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But then he immediately recovered. He was so fast, right. It completely overwhelmed the Leipzig player. But he made some fantastic saves. The thing about him that gives me confidence, and obviously, I have a reputation of being a Roman Bürki apologist, is Gregor Kobel is just a significantly bigger guy. I mean, he's bigger. He's physically more imposing than Roman Bürki. He's more vocal and stuff like that. So, I mean, all of that kind of plays into perception and reality at the same time. I do want to touch on two things that you talked about. One was the comments from Marco Reus. I'm totally on Rose's side here because what alternatives does he have? And say you put a 3-man midfield, then you've got Bellingham, Witzel, and Brandt. That's your 3-man midfield. You're still not going to win the press. It can't all be down to an 18-year-old child versus Brandt and Witzel. Brandt, again, inconsistent. Witzel past his prime at 32. So, I think that comment from Marco Reus, even though he's one of my all-time favorite Dortmund players, I think was completely out of line. And then with Julian Brandt, I'm with you. I mean, if we take away Daniel Malen and then Ansgar Knauf, which, he isn't meant to do this much, Julian Brandt had the worst pass percentage of any Dortmund player. Under 60% of his passes were completed. He had the most progressive passes, but that doesn't really matter if your passes aren't getting to where they need to be. And that's troubling. And I believe that a fully fit Borussia Dortmund side, Julian Brandt wouldn't be playing. You'd have Gio Reyna in there. You'd have Mahmoud Dahoud defensively in midfield.
Even maybe Can. But
I was going to say, you're going to have Emre Can come in because Can gives you something that Brandt doesn't. Brandt has more technical quality than Can, but I feel like John, you at least have a chance to win the ball back. With Brandt, you just don't in transition. And I think with Witsel, he's just too slow. So your options are a little limited. I feel like Dortmund were a little bit, I'm not going to say more stable, but when they put Zagadou in for Witsel, kind of in that more defensive midfield role, and it was okay. But at that point, the game was already over, so it really didn't matter that much. And as far as Daniel Malen goes, he was considered the nominal striker, and his expected goal was 0. So yeah, he was outperformed in XG by Manuel Akanji, Mats Hummels, Thomas Meunier, Jude Bellingham, and of course Marco Reus. And that's a problem. That's a problem when one of your strikers is being outperformed by both your central defenders for expected goals. And Marco Rose talked about this last week, pre-match press conference and then post-match press conference, and reiterated the same thing, that, Daniel Malen has an attitude problem. And that's the big problem. He hasn't gotten used to the significant uptick in physicality and pace of the Bundesliga versus the Eredivisie. You also can't forget, in the Eredivisie, PSV were always, it's PSV and Ajax, the top sides, and Dortmund also one of the top sides, but the underbelly below PSV, Ajax, and then maybe Feyenoord and AZ is significantly softer than it is in the Bundesliga. And I think that's where Daniel Malen is struggling. Obviously, he wasn't brought in as the main goal scorer, but right now he kind of has to step up. And we know, and Lars pointed out to this, he's very wasteful. At PSV, he was very wasteful. But he's not even being wasteful right now. He's just being nothing. I mean, if your XG is 0, you're not wasteful because you're not even doing anything. And there was one counterattack that was so symbolic, where he was driving centrally slightly to the right, and Bellingham was overlapping to the left in so much space. I mean, all he had to do was slot the ball in, and Bellingham was one-on-one with the keeper, and he didn't. He just held the ball up and then took a stupid shot, and you could see Bellingham frustrated and angry because he made that lung-bursting run as a box-to-box midfielder and didn't get played in. If that is Erling Haaland, if that is Marco Reus who would have gotten that ball, or even Julian Brandt, I believe that pass would have gone to Bellingham. And Daniel Malen is in his head. His attitude is wrong. And I can say that definitively because Marco Rose has said it twice within a week, that he has an attitude problem. And that's what needs to be worked on. And that is very concerning for a player that cost, 35 million? If I remember correctly.
What was it, that
Something
much?
like that.
I thought it was 25.
25, 35, who knows anymore. But a lot. And it's just not happening. Now, we all know that players like Aubameyang, Jadon Sancho, obviously Jadon Sancho was a teenager at the time, even Lewandowski had problems adjusting to Dortmund, Bundesliga, and all that kind of stuff.
If I may say this.
Yeah, it was just on the pitch, it wasn't necessarily working just yet. Sancho was immaturity.
First of all, Aubameyang, I think his first game was a hat-trick against Augsburg, if I'm not mistaken. So,
well, he was initially played as a winger,
yes,
but it took a while, until they found out, hey, let's put him as a striker. And Lewandowski, Lucas Barrios, it was a different transition still at the time.
First of all, Lewandowski came from Lech Posen for 5 million.
Yes, yeah. But I don't care about the price. I don't care about the price.
But Daniel Malen cost 30 million from Eindhoven. And I think Malen, at the time, he's already 22 years old. That's the point I was going to make. That, when we signed Malen, that I professed that he probably won't take, too much time to hit the ground running because of his age. He is, sure, still relatively young from our perspective, but from a footballing perspective and the experience he has, he is not that young, to be honest. So all the things you just said are very worrying because he's, very fast gliding into the Yarmolenko Andre Schürrle territory. if I may say so. And even that is unfair to Schürrle and Yarmolenko, because at least those two players had glimpses of anything in the beginning of the season. Now, obviously, Malen did score that one goal against Sporting, which I may say so is a very important goal. But, you know, you are a secondary striker or first team striker or the first rate striker in these lineups, and it's match day 11, and you're playing for Borussia Dortmund, and you hardly can get a shot off, let alone score a goal in the Bundesliga. And that to me is just deficient as hell. I'm sorry, but you know, you have a lot of players around you that can get you into position. So the fact that there's zero chemistry, that Dortmund that his teammates can find him in spots where he's, you know, dangerous, and that he can't do the same, it's just very problematic. And every time I see Daniel Malen up close, I see his mouth shut. I never even once saw him communicate with teammates. And to me, he just feels very out of character. You know, he is not doing the defensive work, the minimum sort of the hustle, if you will, that could maybe you know, help him win the ball against unorganized opposition and then counterattack or so. He's not doing that. You know, I think, oh god, against who was it? Where I think the first Ajax game where he was an entirely complete liability and needed to be subbed off because he didn't nothing, neither in attack nor in defense. And yeah, I think a lot of people said this is Malen's chance to shine against Leipzig because Dortmund desperately needed him, and because Leipzig, at least in theory, are a team where a player with his sort of playing style can profit from. And we did see that Marco Reus did just that. So yeah, it's really hard to say where the journey will go for Daniel Malen, but once again, I feel like when Dortmund spent above 20 million, more often than not, you know, if it's a quote unquote established player, then it's not hitting. And this time again, it is deeply worrying because he did cost a lot of money, and he was not a direct replacement for Jadon Sancho, but at least, you know, you would expect for him to compensate some sort of the goal scoring and assisting. And yeah, you know, the worst part to me is at least when you list players like Lewandowski or Aubameyang and mentioning the fact that they all needed some time to adjust. Yes, I give you that absolutely 100%, but at least in that adjusting time before they really are unquestioned stars and established Dortmund players, at least you saw glimpses. You could at least see that, you know, there's potential and what this player theoretically can do if, you know, what he's attempting comes off. But for Malen, I just don't have that feeling. I don't even have the imagination of what he could do for Dortmund. So Matthias, help me out here, but it's dire.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at FBref, some of the statistics, and, you know, when you've got your attacking players, you know, whether it's a winger or a striker, you do expect them sometimes to take on the opponent for attempted dribbles. And he attempted one. You know, he can
dribble. He's good at that. He can get past opponents.
Yes.
You know, the one-on-one skill is something that Malen should excel in. You know, he can skip past opponents that are right of him to the left side and then cut inside or whatever. That should be something that we repeatedly say see each game, but you don't.
And we saw that, I would say, in the first month and a half. It was like you could see what was coming. It was like, all right, you know, he hasn't scored yet, but it'll come. He's getting into the right positions. He's making some great runs. He's pulling players out of position with his movement, and it's just kind of fallen off. And it's part of it is maybe he's frustrated that he's not scoring, so he's going into a shell. You know, he's obviously not from Dortmund. He hasn't built up a chemistry with his teammates yet, because that can take time. And so he's just going into a bit of a shell. And attacking players, well, anybody, any human, that can then suffer from that mentally. I mean, we've talked about that, the psychology of keepers. The same psychology really applies, obviously for a different reason, to strikers. But, I mean, there was a short period of time, a few games where everyone was questioning Haaland because he didn't score a hat trick in each game for like 3 or 4 games. He didn't score. But, and he was snatching a bit of opportunities, but there was never, you didn't feel like, shoulders down, head down, oh, woe is me, give up. Which some players have. That's one of the things that in negative streaks, Jadon Sancho had a lot of. Gio Reyna can have that as well. But again, younger players at the time. Rafael Guerreiro can have that. Always have that issue with him. But Donyell Malen, he can't be that way just yet when you have to prove yourself. Otherwise, he is running headlong into transfer flop. And I won't, kind of like with you, I'm not going to quite compare him to Yarmolenko or Schürrle because, at different positions, different expectations maybe. But I never felt with those two players that the attitude was wrong. I just feel like they were out of form. It didn't fit. They didn't score. It was just wasn't right for them. But I never felt like there was an attitude issue. And with him, well, there is, because Marco Rose has said so twice now, within a week, that a lot of it is mental. Aside from having to get used to the pace and physicality of the Bundesliga, there's a big mental issue going on there. And that's a difficult one. That's a very, very difficult one. So hopefully he can sort it out before the winter break.
Maybe his body just hasn't adjusted to actual food after living in the Netherlands.
It's true. He did have the Flitzer, as Marco Rose said. But, I mean, think of it. Was it last season or the season before when Jadon Sancho had like half of a season of slump? I want to say it was last season.
Yeah.
Where like there was no assist, there was like 1 assist maybe in the first half of the season. There was no goal. And then the second half of the season, I mean, he torched the league. And hopefully Donyell Malen will do the same thing. And
I mean, I'm not giving up hope. It's just a little harder to hope right now. That's it.
Yeah, and the problem is, of course, people like to dogpile on people. And if you see someone who's clearly struggling mentally, dogpiling on them isn't going to help. It's going to make the situation worse. And obviously, Borussia Dortmund, the coaching staff and so on, are completely aware of the situation because they've addressed it publicly twice now in a week. So hopefully they can, they can't really take these 2 weeks because I'm pretty sure Donyell Malen is with the Dutch national team. So obviously he's not there. So it would have been better if he would have been in Dortmund. They could have worked more with him. But maybe that's exactly the break he needs.
I don't know. If he gets a hat-trick for the Dutch national team because they thumb some crappy other national team, then I'm all for it. I think the last time he scored. So I don't know who the Netherlands play in this international break. Do you?
I am not entirely sure. I'm looking at it right now. They are playing Malta. No, that's Croatia. It bumped up for me. That would have been a nice one though. I'm looking, and I'm scrolling.
How can it take so long?
Well, there are a lot of games.
So
there we go. Montenegro. They're playing
Norway.
Montenegro.
I just googled Netherlands national team and I had it right away. What did you do?
They were the last. I scrolled through Spieltag on Kicker app, and they were literally the last match of the day. It's like, oh, come on. Just get to it already. Anyway, maybe. I mean, maybe that's exactly what he needs, kind of an easier go of it and score a couple of goals against Montenegro. Not saying that it's easy against Norway or Montenegro, but it's not Spain or Italy, so maybe that'll work.
Anyway, back to the Dortmund game. Because overall, I still I'm still happy with the performance that Dortmund showed, even though we've nitpicked quite a lot. But overall, I still like the amount of fight they showed, the never say die mentality, because this game could have been over much sooner than when Yusuf Poulsen scored. When was it? In the 68th minute or so. This game could have been over by then. And even then, it still felt a little bit like maybe Dortmund could find a way in the last 20 minutes and fluke one in, just like Frankfurt did the previous week. And I have to say, when Mokoko came in for Malen, I thought that he moved much more than in terms of having any impact on the game than Malen did in the previous 70 minutes. So there's that. But just overall, for the 70 minutes until Poulsen scored that back post goal, which Torgen Hazard, the left back, could not defend. I think Dortmund really did give Leipzig a good run for their money, and the fact that they scored the way they scored with the Marco Reus goal also was a nice little wake-up call for Leipzig, in the sense that they all of a sudden had to deal with the fact that Dortmund might actually also have some attacking momentum, which obviously was completely lacking in the first half. So I'll say this. Overall, we've talked about the Malen problems, but the next man up mentality in this Dortmund team is insane, and the squad depth that we have, that we are this competitive still, is really good, because if Leipzig were really any good, they probably would have won by 5. But they didn't, and kudos to Dortmund for doing that. And it's obviously good news that Zagadou is returning, and I'm looking forward to having him more in the game, especially if Pongracic plays like this. I don't know what happened to Pongracic. I feel like the last 2 games, so all of a sudden he's making mistakes.
He was on Twitch.
Yeah, but even before that, he made mistakes all of a sudden, and what looked like a very solid player all of a sudden looks a little sketchy, and I don't like this new development. But a player that did not look sketchy at all to me was also Mats Hummels. I feel like we hardly ever mention him, but in the most games this season, I think he is one of our best performers, and really cleans up a lot of things with his anticipation. And I'm just really glad to still have him, and I still think he's performing at a very high level, and I love watching him play football. So the fact that we have that, I think, warms my heart a little bit, and is a nice adage, let's say, because without him, I feel like a lot of things would have gone way worse. The fact that, for example, Cologne didn't score is also big credit to Hummels, because the way he handled Modest was really good. So, against Leipzig, I think he also had a very decent game. And I just wanted to mention that. So in terms of fight that's in this team, I'm just very positive, and I feel like just because of the attitude overall, Dortmund will just score way more points than they usually would. And of course, once the injury crisis abates a little bit, I feel like it's going to be much easier for Dortmund to pick up these wins. Because, Matthias, there's one thing that really annoyed me about this match day, and this particular game, is that Bundesliga pundits were all raving about Leipzig and how Jesse Marsch is turning things around, and I just wasn't all that impressed with Leipzig, I'll be honest. I think a fit Dortmund, maybe with 2 more players, bring in Dahoud and Haaland, for example, or so, or Dahoud and Guerrero, or maybe just Haaland, I don't know. I feel like a couple more additions for Dortmund, and a bit more fitness, less fatigue, and I think Leipzig don't really have a whiff, to be honest. I don't think they're that great. Yes, Nkunku had a good game, but Dortmund, if they're any bit better, they're just cutting this off, and they punish Leipzig for their makeshift defense. So it's just annoying to me. But maybe in hindsight, it's good, because it might keep Marsch longer employed. But Matthias, I wasn't that impressed with Leipzig, and I didn't really like the narrative that was spun, and didn't really buy the whole and all the headlines of how great Leipzig played. I wasn't that impressed. I thought that Cologne played better last week.
Yes. No, absolutely. Obviously we're biased anti-Leipzig.
Yes.
Anti-RB Leipzig.
Yes.
Okay. There's no doubt about that. And anybody with a soul should be. I'll be honest. If you support RB Leipzig, unless you're from Leipzig, you're soulless. So I'll just put that out. Soulless and heartless on top of it. So not at all speaking in superlatives there. No, but in all seriousness, it's always the same bullshit. With Hoffenheim, they do the same thing. With Leipzig, at least they've stopped saying Cinderella story, because good God, they kept saying that for years with Leipzig. I'm like, you want to see a Cinderella story? Go to the Zweite Bundesliga and watch Heidenheim. Or Christian Streich at Freiburg. Those are Cinderella stories. This is not it. Okay, it's a franchise. When I also heard, I forget who it was, or if I read it, where people say, if we move forward in the future, Leipzig will be the number one contender with Bayern for the Bundesliga title. How the fuck do you figure that? It's like Dortmund just going to stop making money going to the Champions League and playing? Like, that's just such an idiotic term. And I understand that on the English feeds, they like to play these games, especially if you've got an American audience and you have an American coach like Jesse Marsch. And I'm not a big Jesse Marsch fan. Yeah, and I'm not a big Jesse Marsch fan because, he had his struggles at Red Bull Salzburg, and Salzburg needs to run away with that league in Austria every single year. If you don't, you're a failure. Sorry, it's like, come on. Their advantage in the Austrian Bundesliga is, I'm not going to say embarrassing because I don't want it to reflect poorly on teams like Austria Wien or Rapid Wien, but it is embarrassing that it exists. And that's a true shame that Red Bull has destroyed domestic football in Austria to that degree. And they're going to do it in Brazil, by the way, too. I watch a lot of Brazilian football, and they're on their way there, too. Their franchise in Brazil is actually in the Copa Sudamericana final already, believe it or not. So I agree with you. I think a fully fit Dortmund would have given, in the preferred Marco Rose system of the 4-4-2 diamond, would have given Leipzig one hell of a run for their money because it would have tied up their central defenders more. You have to account for Holland at all times, so they would have had to put a body on him. Dahoud at the base of that diamond is secure in possession, presses well, and his pressing resistance is fantastic. And that is one of the key things that messed up Dortmund is Brandt isn't great with pressing resistance. Witzel used to be better at it, but really isn't.
I mean, the first big chance that Leipzig had was because Witzel was pressing. He couldn't get rid of the ball as he usually does.
Exactly. And the problem is nobody moved into a position. That's the other problem. Nobody moved into a position for him to play it too.
He's still and those are just
theoretically, but that's not how Dortmund are coached to play in that situation. It's looking more for a progressive pass rather than going back to the keeper. But obviously, sometimes you just have to do that. Just like in defense, sometimes you just have to knock that damn thing 50 yards down the pitch versus trying to play it out nicely at times. It's just sometimes you got to do that. So hopefully Dortmund will just regain some of their fitness, and then in time, obviously, then they have to play Leipzig again this season. Leipzig, this is pretty much the team you will have even then. They don't have a ton of injuries, I don't believe. I believe this is their main starting 11. For the most part, Silva came on later. And Dortmund at that time, if they're fully fit, it's a completely different game. And it's almost like a lot of people ignored the fact that, Dortmund had a makeshift team put in there where you had an attacking winger and an attacking central midfielder playing at left back. You didn't really have a true out-and-out striker, and everybody has to play every 3 to 4 days for 70 to 90 minutes. And that just takes its toll, and it's like a perfect storm to run up against a Leipzig team that just presses the way they do. You know, it's not that they outplayed them like Ajax did. Ajax pressed them and outplayed them. Leipzig didn't outpass them. They didn't dissect Dortmund. They just overwhelmed Dortmund after a while. And like you said, I think with a fully fit team, that just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Obviously, if both have 100% fit teams, I still think that Dortmund are much better than Leipzig. But it's also crazy to think, you know, the later stages of the game, because Leipzig could bring on Forsberg. They brought on André Silva, Olmo, and Konrad Leimer. You know, those are really strong substitutions. And if you look at that for comparison, Dortmund brought on Ansgar Knauf, Moukoko Khagne, and Dan-Axel Zagadou. So, in terms of depth and, you know, just talent, the team that Dortmund have to compete with late in the game was also so much better on Leipzig's part. So, in so many ways, it just, you know, a forgettable game, and I really hate that Leipzig came out on top in the end. You know, it would have been nice had Dortmund just snuck a free kick or a corner kick to equalize and keep them at a 9 points distance or so. I mean, the one good thing about this match day, if you will, is that Leverkusen at least drew against Hertha Berlin. Bayern obviously won, are now 4 points ahead. So, you know, if you wanted to see a showdown between Bayern and Dortmund for the top of the Bundesliga in, 3 weeks time or so when they play against each other, I think it's the match day 13 game. So Dortmund play against Stuttgart next. And I think, I don't know who Bayern play, but it's also some team they're definitely going to beat. I think maybe Augsburg or so. Yeah. So it's probably still going to be 4 points different on matchday 13 when they meet, so Dortmund can't leapfrog them then, which would have been a fun scenario, but just doesn't happen now. And I'll be honest, Matthias, I've said it all along. I just don't think that Dortmund can keep up with Bayern anyway. So you know, as much as I would love to talk about a title race, I'm just not feeling or seeing it. And the sad part, to me at least, I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, from the standpoint of the squad that Dortmund have, it's not really what you would dub a transition year. I think when you have Haaland on your team, which for probably the last season you have him on your team, this is at least on paper the season where you will go for it and try to have a title race. But if you have that many injuries, it just comes utopic for me. And sadly, that's the situation we're in. Dortmund had a nice points tally nevertheless. But yeah, this loss against Leipzig really does hurt. And the fact that Leipzig are now only, in quotation marks, off 6 points of Dortmund is also very annoying. So, you know, I really do hope they're going away, just like Wolfsburg will again under their new coach. But who knows, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an annoying season right now because Dortmund, in theory, are good to watch. And I really am curious to find out what Marco Rose's vision really is, because I don't feel like we've seen it that much yet. But the current situation just doesn't allow it. So there's that. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because I think a fully fit Dortmund, you absolutely are in a title race. I mean, and it may still come. You know me, I try to be as optimistic as I can as long as possible. That all being said, I mean, Dortmund are I saw this statistic on Kicker. Dortmund are the third most improved side in the Bundesliga so far this season. I think that's a plus of 7 points over last year at this time. The only two that are even better are Freiburg and Mainz. You know, Mainz were really, really bad a year ago.
Yeah, I was just going to say Freiburg, earlier when you said Cinderella story, just the fact that Mainz are still in the Bundesliga, because I think were they last at the end of the Hinrunde last season or so? But
I think they were second to last because we were talking about being decimated. Yeah,
forgot about it.
And that's the thing. I mean, if you talk about decimated by injuries, that is a story also of Schalke's relegation season. I mean, they were destroyed by injuries and they just couldn't recover. Dortmund aren't that. So, and plus there are other things at Schalke that just go wrong and are still going wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't just the injuries.
Dortmund don't have to deal with.
No.
Yeah. No. But yeah,
the
injuries obviously hurt.
If you talk about injuries, for example, Dortmund's next opponent, Stuttgart, is also really injury-stricken. So at least I hope Dortmund can benefit a little bit from that. And of course, when we look at players possibly returning, and I'm not entirely sure what this extensive list is, and I'm also not sure what players will return from the international break healthy, but if Guerreiro alone is healthy and can play for, I don't know, the entire stretch till the winter break, that would be huge because he's obviously one of Dortmund's best players. And, that also frees up Hazard so you can have him up top a little bit further and maybe take some weight off Malen. So just having one player return frees up so much other stuff. So if Guerreiro comes back and hits form and, which you can expect right away, maybe he might have a couple of slow games in the beginning. I don't know how his muscles are, but we all know how Guerreiro always needs a little bit of time. Still, it should be a tremendous change in Dortmund's overall structure, and I really do hope that Bellingham and Marco Reus stay fit, because to me they have been so consistently good this season, and not only that, but also very healthy and always among the top hustlers of this Dortmund team. So on the one hand, I'm really fearing for them. On the other hand, I am applauding their consistency, considering all the shit they have been going through.
Yep, right there with you.
So, yeah, Matthias. So, since it's winter, it's not winter break. Since it's international break, and we don't have that much else to talk about, because obviously the Stuttgart game is still a bit far out. Let's maybe take a look at potential transfers, or just identify spots that Dortmund need to cover. I think the most prominent rumor these days is that maybe Witsel might go to Juventus. From players leaving, obviously Adeyemi or whatever he's called, the Salzburg player, joining Dortmund is also very hot news right now. But I wanted to talk about the whole Witsel situation with you, because clearly he is past his prime and he is not helping Dortmund the way he did in the past. And I'll be frank, if it were up to me, I'd probably sell him if possible, or let him go at the end of the summer, even though he still has some value for Dortmund right now. I still think he does have good stints and elements that give this team structure, but nevertheless, just with a long-term view, I'm not really seeing it. So, Matthias, if opportunity comes and say Juventus shows interest and want to sign a player, I don't know if that's true or not, would you do it? And B, what kind of replacement would you look for? And don't say Delaney.
I mean, would I do it in a perfect world where Dortmund have no injuries? Yes. Would I do it right now? Oh, hell no. I mean, Dortmund have almost nobody left. If you let him go, obviously that kind of playmaking type player, I mean, that's Mahmoud Dahoud. If Dahoud is fit week in, week out, he will always play there. So one player I wouldn't mind seeing, he's also in a very good run of form right now, is Dennis Zakaria from Borussia Mönchengladbach. I think he would fit with Marco Rose. He would fit with the Borussia Dortmund way of playing it and the system. That would be one player I would like to see. Now, he's not a like for like type player, but I don't think that's what Dortmund necessarily need in that type of role, because
no, we absolutely do not need another Witsel type player. We need pace.
No,
just
and what I was saying is, are you looking for a backup for Dahoud? That just doesn't make sense to me. You can build up a little bit differently. Then I'd slot Zagadou into that position, because he does have that progressive passing ability from deep. So no, I mean, Dennis Zakaria for me would be a player I would love to see, because then you have that core of energetic, pacey, also technical players in central midfield that you can rotate between John, Bellingham, and a player like Zakaria. So Zakaria is the type of player I believe Dortmund should then go after. The only time I would even consider that Dortmund should sell Witsel is if they've already signed that replacement, or they're about to sign that replacement. Selling him right now with the injury situation in a vacuum, I think you can't do it. But the good thing is no one will be selling right now anyway. I mean, you're talking 2 months from now, and then we'll just have to see where the situation is. Would he fit for Juventus, on the other hand? Of course it is. I mean, Serie A is a league where older players tend to thrive. It's still slower paced for the most part. Juventus are not going to win Serie A this season. They may not even make Champions League if I'm that lucky. So does it make sense for Witsel? Sure, absolutely. Does it make sense for Juventus? Sure. Does it make sense for Dortmund? Yes, but you need that other type of player, and the Zakaria is the type of player I'd like to see.
Okay, fair enough. So, one player, I'm just gonna say this, who I really want to see in Dortmund is Sebastian Aller. Obviously, we saw very up close how good he is, but I already wanted him when he was still playing for Frankfurt, and I did not quite understand why Dortmund can't get a player like him when he's joining freaking West Ham. Nothing against West Ham. I think they're even in Champions League spots right now.
Wages. Yeah, it's just wages.
Yeah, I know, but still, can't be always 100% of the reasons. And Haller also didn't do all that well in West Ham. But I feel like from a skill set of what Haller brings to the table, I feel like he's a very complete striker. And he is good at headers, he is very good at hold-up play, he can dribble, he can play make a little bit, and he can finish in several ways and forms. He has a very good palette of striker skills, and he is also just darn efficient right now, I think. So in that regard, I mean, he's also 27. He's like in the perfect age. I don't know what his details are, if he's even remotely gettable. I think no, he has a contract till 2025, and I don't think that Ajax really would let him go. But I'm just gonna say it. If there's any possibility to sign this guy, I would love to see him in Dortmund. But I feel like if there's a Haller transfer, it's probably going to be another team that has more wages to pay. Let's put it this way. But yeah, it's just a striker I really, really love watching, and I also think would be a good long-term fit for Dortmund. So yeah, also I think if Dortmund sign Haller, he would, unlike Malen, immediately work for them and make sense. So I don't know if it's feasible at all. I know there will be some money that Dortmund receive for Haaland, so if they would invest that into Haller, I would be very happy with that. Now, Matthias, I have to ask you though, because the hotter news, so to speak, is Karim Adeyemi, who is with Red Bull Salzburg right now, just like Haaland was, and he is 19 years old, and of course he is a German international now, and I think one of the very few that make it from the Austrian league. So obviously he can play soccer, but that being said, I don't know much about him. I don't know if you do, but if you have any opinion on him to share and a potential move to Dortmund, which I think Transfermarkt is ranking at 46%, please be my guest and tell me now.
Well, I mean, there are a whole bunch of strikers listed by Transfermarkt as, a decent chance of going to Dortmund.
The absolute no I want to say here right away is Timo Werner. Absolutely do not want to see this guy in Dortmund.
No, I don't think Timo Werner come because it just comes down to the finances. It's just not
but
work.
Even if it were realistic, I just don't want him.
Yeah. Karim Adeyemi, I think the overall upside is there from what I've seen a little bit in the Champions League because I can't watch the Austrian Bundesliga. He's the hot prospect. Everybody kind of wants him. That tends to mean he's good at what he does. Would he be a fit for Dortmund? Yeah, I mean, Salzburg play a high-intensity, pressing, high-paced game that obviously Marco Rose likes because he's a former Red Bull Salzburg manager. So, you mentioned Sebastian Aller. I mean, in a perfect world, you invest the money from a Haaland transfer into both Adeyemi and Sebastian Aller. Playing in that diamond system, you have extraordinarily dynamic attackers with Daniel Malen in there as well, who can then either slot in behind them or with them. And then, one of the players that I think that really makes Ajax tick is Dusan Tadic. And that's the Marco Reus role. And so that, to me, that would be the perfect scenario. The perfect scenarios. I mean, there are other players listed here. Trying to see like Dusan Vlahovic from Fiorentina. It's rated at 33%. He's going to be too much money. I mean, he's valued at 50 million. He's going to want high wages. He's not going to Dortmund. I would be shocked if he would go to Dortmund. Sebastian Aller, I think, is like 19%. And there again, it just may be somebody coming in with more money to offer it to him, like Atletico. He would be actually a good fit for a Joe Simeone type system. But Adeyemi, if Dortmund get him, one, it sets another marker for what Dortmund can do. He's obviously looking at it as, because Bayern want him as well, but what are his options at Bayern? To be a rotational option for Lewandowski? He doesn't want that. That stagnates his career. He's looking at Dortmund and goes, I can play right away. Whether he comes in the winter and can play right away, or comes in the summer after Haaland leaves, he can play right away. I mean, that at the end of the day was also the direction that Haaland went, that Jadon Sancho, that a lot of these players, Jude Bellingham and so on, are like, I can play right away at a high quality and play in the Champions League. And so for Karim Adeyemi, I think that's the natural progression, the natural fit. And I think just Dortmund are the perfect fit for him instead of someone like Bayern. Bayern is really the other big club that's being mentioned a lot for him to go to. I believe reports are that Dortmund right now are favored, but who knows what happens in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are many reports that Dortmund, are ahead of Leipzig and Bayern, but I've seen this a million times, and I'll be honest, I don't know if that really means anything, to be honest. But would be nice. Obviously, Dortmund need to sign another striker, and they are very much in the market for one. And I do think with Leipzig having André Silva and with Bayern obviously having Lewandowski, that Dortmund at least have the argument that whoever they sign, they can promise him to be the number one guy. So I do think that's an advantage, and I think you're right in that regard. But the other question I have for that position is obviously we've talked about it a lot. Backup striker Matthias. Does it make sense for Dortmund to try to find one in this next transfer period? Because of course they do have Yusufa Moukoko, they have Daniel Malen, who I don't know if he's a backup necessarily. He is a starter right now, but at least he can play that striker role. So does if he's not asked to play left back or wing back, Torgen Hazard. Marco Reus, when he's playing up top, is also not the worst player in the world. So do you think this is an issue that Dortmund should address and say Moukoko is still too raw and Steffen Tigges is just not at the level? And if we want to be competitive really, and Haaland is injured or whoever the number one guy is, we need an out-and-out striker there.
Well, I think that's where the discussion is coming in also with Adeyemi as a possible winter transfer. Because then you have the backup with the outlook that, hey, you're going to be one of the main people after the summer, but you can also slot in right away because obviously Daniel Malen, we've got some issues, some betting in issues. I'm not to say that Adeyemi wouldn't have those either, but I have a feeling it may be a little bit less of an issue. So I believe Dortmund do need a backup striker if you're playing a 2-striker system. Granted, if everybody is healthy, you're almost playing with 2 false strikers, because Moukoko for me is a totally different type of striker than Haaland, of course. I mean, just look at the 2 guys standing next to each other and you can already see the difference between them physically. And that makes a difference. So I do believe Dortmund need another striker to come in. If it can be Adeyemi in the winter, then you've got your problem solved. And then you can look for another one for the summer. As well, because obviously you're looking at Haaland leaving, and then you'll need somebody else, but you need that money at that point.
Do you think that there are any veteran strikers from other Bundesliga clubs that you could sign who could do a formidable job for Dortmund and know the role they are having? Is there anyone you can think of from the top of your head? Because I right now cannot, but I feel like there might be a couple names here and there that you might be able to get somehow.
I mean, I'm thinking and looking while we speak. I mean, if he wasn't injured, I would say Niels Petersen.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, he's 32. Be that as it may, I mean, he's proven to be a very good impact sub. Let's be honest.
Yes.
That is one. Another guy that I really like, but he's more of a winger than a central striker, is Vincenzo Grifo.
Is he playing for Wolfsburg
from
right
Freiburg.
Or did he?
No, he's at Freiburg.
Did he move back? I know he did play for Wolfsburg.
And he's having a hell of a season as well. So, I mean, but he plays more of a winger type position there, but he can also play as a central striker. And he's also, as we know, very good from set pieces.
That's right. We should just sign him so Freiburg don't defeat us anymore.
Yeah, it's probably just, if that's the case, need Daniel Caligiuri as well. Other than that, I mean, trying to think who else could fit in that, especially because you're saying, a veteran striker.
See, my favorite option always would have been sort of the successor of the Adrian Ramos role would have been Finn Bogason, but he is from Augsburg, but he sadly is always so injury prone. So you can't really bank on him, and I don't know if a Cordova, for example, would be an option like that. Maybe I'm just looking because I think Cordova is also from the same country. I don't know. Is he Colombian or is he? No, he's from Venezuela.
Yes.
Never mind.
Oh, different. Okay. Well, I mean, or look at someone, go to Hoffenheim. Look at someone like Andrej Kramaric or Munas Dabur. Dabur, he's 29. He does score. He's not going to be overly expensive. And he would be okay, probably, with that type of role. Another one, if he wasn't just scoring the way he is right now, would have been someone like Anthony Modeste before the season, because he wasn't very happy at Köln, and I just feel like that would have been a perfect fit. But obviously that's off the table right now because he's having an absolutely fantastic season for Köln, and he would be insane to leave that situation right now. I mean, if we're looking at veterans where you like go in and maybe you could occasionally score, Florian Niederlechner is one. But again, I mean, these are really just backups.
Yeah, but that's exactly the defined role.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically you're looking for Sandro Wagner.
Yeah, basically.
Just less of an asshole.
Yeah, but someone that's significantly better than Stefan Tigges, but also probably very far away from the Haaland level, just so that he is still in a feasible, situation. Because I think the role will be clearly defined. It's not a striker that will play hours and hours per season, but at least someone that's proven that knows that what he is doing, and doesn't lose his head when things get a little chaotic, and just like Julian Schieber back in the day, just have the 1-2 moments that really do make a difference sometimes. So
I mean, here are two more names, just because they have scored prolifically, but they are not happy in their current situation. Go to the capital, and you're looking at someone like Piontek, who is not happy there, but we know he can score, and they could probably get him at a decent price, or Ishak Belfodil, who's also at Hertha. Those are also players that I feel, I mean, they've proven they can score. They've proven they can score against Dortmund. Well, at least Belfodil has. And Piontek, as a Serie A fan, I know the quality that's there, and he's only 26. So this isn't really someone you're looking at who's around 30, but a change of scenery and a change of system could definitely benefit him. So I guess there are a few purely looking at Bundesliga strikers that could fulfill that role, and maybe even with the upside, if you bring in an Adeyemi to be like, maybe there's more time for you next season. Less so a Florian Niederlechner or someone like that, or Munas de Boer, but, a Piontek you could look at if he plays well. You could even do something because he does want out at Hertha, and he's not very happy there. I mean, Hertha brought in like 4 new strikers or something, 4 new attacking players this year, to maybe do a loan for the rest of the season with a possible buy option. I mean, that's always on the card. I mean, that's what essentially Pongracic is doing.
Right.
And if he would play well, which right now he's hitting inconsistency, and obviously the whole Twitch gate is not playing into his favor, but that's a situation like that you could probably look at one of those players, or you just outright buy one of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to mull things over, because if we really look at it, I think in the long term, obviously Dortmund need to find a replacement for Witsel, and that needs to be a really good playmaker. Not only someone that just replaces Witsel. I think it needs to be an upgrade of Witsel, and I think that's obviously possible. And I'm interested to see who Dortmund come up with, and also I think the striker position needs to be really addressed. Otherwise, if you look at fullback, I think the eternal struggle will be to replace Nico Schulz with someone more capable. I think because Guerrero to me is just set, and if he sees his future in Dortmund, then I see his future in Dortmund. To be quite honest, and otherwise, I don't know where the journey goes with Brandt and Malen. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of movement, especially when Kiel takes over completely. I think he has his own ideas as well, and who knows what's on Marco Rose's wish list, to be honest, because I do think he has some influence on the transfers too. Otherwise, I don't think Pongracic would be in Dortmund right now. So there's that. Anyway, Matthias, I don't really have too many other names to drop in terms of potential players that Dortmund may or may not sign, but I think for a quick look of what's out there, we did an okay job. It's not like Dortmund right now are a hotbed of rumors that you can explicitly talk about players connected to the club. So, I think for an international break episode, we have done our job. And, I think we shall be back next week.
Can I throw one name at you just to get your thoughts on it?
Sure.
I'd be curious. Jonathan Burkhardt from Mainz. I mean, he's our leading scorer. He's under 21 international for Germany. He's on the radar of Hansi Flick. He's got a contract for 2 more years at Mainz. He's only 21.
I mean, he's a budding talent, but I really haven't seen enough of him yet to really have a formed opinion. But I feel like by the time I have a formed opinion, it might be too late. But something, I don't know, it's a weird feeling, but something just tells me that he's probably a better signing for Leverkusen than he is for Dortmund. I don't know where I'm getting this gut feeling from, but I feel like he's just not entirely in Dortmund's shape. I might be completely wrong about that, but
no, that's totally fair.
I feel like
it was just a curiosity question since we were on the striker topic.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen him a lot for Mainz because I do tend to watch a lot of Mainz games inadvertently. I don't know if it's the first touch or the pace or something. He definitely is a capable striker, but I don't know. He to me is like more the next Stefan Kiesling than the next Lewandowski. So I also don't know how I would feel about Nemcha, who obviously has been called up to the first team.
Yeah, I've got absolutely no opinion there.
So, yeah. Okay. I guess then that's it for this week, Matthias. Please tell our listeners where to follow you on the interwebs.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthias.
Very well. You can find me at Stefan Wotzko on Twitter. You can follow all of us on Twitter and Facebook at Yellowwallpod. If you want to subscribe to the show, please do that on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. If you want to contribute financially, please go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. And I have nothing left to say other than thank you for listening and goodbye.